CLEP History Civil Rights Movement. Question 1. Which answer best matches this CLEP History Civil Rights Movement clue? A Virginia assembly gave colonists an early model of representative government. Option A, House of Burgesses. Option B, Federalist Papers. Option C, Italian unification. Option D, Marshall Plan in Europe. The correct answer is option A, House of Burgesses. This points to House of Burgesses because it was an early elected legislative body in colonial Virginia. Federalist Papers points instead to essays defended ratification of the Constitution and explained federal power. Italian unification points instead to Piedmont, Garibaldi, and nationalist politics helped create Italy, and Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to U.S. aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments. Question 2. How would a CLEP history question most likely test this clue? Resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. Option A, Stonewall Uprising. Option B, women's suffrage. Option C, Stalin. Option D, Peace of Augsburg. The correct answer is option A, Stonewall Uprising. This points to Stonewall Uprising because the event became a symbol of modern gay rights activism. Women's suffrage points instead to women organized for voting rights and legal equality. Stalin points instead to Soviet rule featured collectivization, 5-year plans, and political terror. And Peace of Augsburg points instead to German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Question 3. Why does this clue matter for CLEP History Civil Rights Movement? A source reflects the author's position, interests, and audience. Option A, Enlightenment. Option B, Articles of Confederation. Option C, Point of View. Option D, Abolitionism. The correct answer is option C, Point of View. This points to point of view because understanding perspective helps evaluate evidence. Enlightenment points instead to thinkers emphasized reason, natural rights, and criticism of tradition. Articles of Confederation points instead to the first national government had a weak central authority and no power to tax directly, and abolitionism points instead to reformers demanded the end of slavery through moral and political arguments. Question 4. When reviewing CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue? The Supreme Court established judicial review. Option A, Marbury v. Madison. Option B, stagflation. Option C, French and Indian War. Option D, Progressive Era. The correct answer is option A, Marbury v. Madison. This points to Marbury v. Madison because the case confirmed the court's power to declare laws unconstitutional. Stagflation points instead to the 1970s saw high inflation combined with slow growth. French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes, and Progressive Era points instead to reformers targeted corruption, monopolies, unsafe workplaces, and social injustice. Question 5. Where does this clue point in CLEP history content? Liberals and nationalists challenged conservative governments across Europe. Option A, Mexican-American War. Option B, Industrial Revolution. Option C, Revolutions of 1848. Option D, Printing Press. The correct answer is option C, Revolutions of 1848. This points to revolutions of 1848 because most revolutions failed but revealed deep social and political tensions. Mexican-American War points instead to U.S. victory added Western lands and reignited debate over slavery's expansion. Industrial Revolution points instead to mechanized production transformed work, cities, and economies, and Printing Press points instead to movable type spread books and ideas more quickly. Question 6. Identify the answer connected to this CLEP History Civil Rights Movement clue. An international organization was created after World War II to promote peace and cooperation. Option A, Montgomery Bus Boycott. Option B, Compromise of 1850. Option C, Abolitionism. Option D, United Nations. The correct answer is option D, United Nations. This points to United Nations because the UN reflected hopes for collective security after global war. Montgomery Bus Boycott points instead to African Americans protested segregated buses after Rosa Parks' arrest. Compromise of 1850 points instead to Congress admitted California as free and strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act. And abolitionism points instead to reformers demanded the end of slavery through moral and political arguments. Question 7. Choose the term that completes this history clue. Italy's fascist leader built a dictatorship after World War I. Option A. Truman Doctrine. Option B. Mussolini. Option C. Triangular trade. Option D. Constantine. The correct answer is option B. Mussolini. This points to Mussolini because his regime became an early model of fascist rule. Truman Doctrine points instead to the United States' promised aid to resist communist expansion. Triangular trade points instead to Atlantic trade linked Europe, Africa, and the Americas through goods and enslaved labor. And Constantine points instead to a Roman emperor legalized Christianity and founded Constantinople. Question 8. Select in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue. Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France? Option A. Compromise of 1850. Option B. Louisiana Purchase. Option C. Christianity. Option D. Investiture controversy. The correct answer is option B. Louisiana Purchase. This points to Louisiana Purchase because the purchase expanded Western settlement and raised constitutional questions. Compromise of 1850 points instead to Congress admitted California as free and strengthened the Fugitive Slave Act. Christianity points instead to a religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe. And investiture controversy points instead to popes and emperors fought over appointing bishops. Question 9. Determine which answer explains this CLEP History Civil Rights Movement clue. Federal policy forced many Native peoples west of the Mississippi? Option A. Indian Removal Act. Option B. End of the Cold War. Option C. Italian Unification. Option D. Civil Rights Act of 1964. The correct answer is option A. Indian Removal Act. This points to Indian Removal Act because the law led to removals such as the Trail of Tears. End of the Cold War points instead to Soviet collapse. Ended the decades-long US-Soviet rivalry. Italian unification points instead to Piedmont. Garibaldi and nationalist politics helped create Italy. And Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. Question 10. Recognize the event or idea behind this clue. A Union victory marked a major turning point in the Civil War? Option A. Ancient Egypt. Option B. Dred Scott decision. Option C. Appeasement. Option D. Gettysburg. The correct answer is option D. Gettysburg. This points to Gettysburg because the battle halted Lee's invasion of the North. Ancient Egypt points instead to pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization. Dred Scott decision points instead to the Supreme Court denied black citizenship and rejected limits on slavery in territories. And appeasement points instead to Britain and France made concessions to Hitler hoping to avoid war. Question 11. Pinpoint the best answer for this history clue. A monk challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation? Option A. Black Death. Option B. Martin Luther. Option C. Dred Scott decision. Option D. Second Great Awakening. The correct answer is option B. Martin Luther. This points to Martin Luther because his criticisms questioned Catholic authority and doctrine. Black Death points instead to plague killed millions and disrupted Europe's economy and society. Dred Scott decision points instead to the Supreme Court denied black citizenship and rejected limits on slavery in territories. And Second Great Awakening points instead to revivalism-inspired reform movements, such as abolition and temperance. Question 12. Spot the answer that matches this exam clue. A military leader spread French reforms while building an empire. Option A. Napoleon Bonaparte. Option B. 17th Amendment. Option C. English Civil War. Option D. French and Indian War. The correct answer is option A. Napoleon Bonaparte. This points to Napoleon Bonaparte because his rule reshaped European politics and law. 17th Amendment points instead to senators became elected directly by voters. English Civil War points instead to conflict between king and parliament challenged royal absolutism. And French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes. Question 13. Compare the options and choose the one tied to this clue. Britain loosely enforced colonial rules before tightening control after 1763. Option A. Crusades. Option B. Salutary neglect. Option C. Truman Doctrine. Option D. Alexander the Great. The correct answer is option B. Salutary neglect. This points to salutary neglect because loose enforcement helped colonists develop habits of self-government. Crusades points instead to European Christians launched military campaigns toward the eastern Mediterranean. Truman Doctrine points instead to the United States promised aid to resist communist expansion, and Alexander the Great points instead to Macedonian conquest spread Greek culture across the eastern Mediterranean and Near East. Question 14. Connect this CLEP History Civil Rights Movement clue to the right answer. Mechanized production transformed work, cities, and economies. Option A. Sherman Antitrust Act. Option B. Voting Rights Act of 1965. Option C. Industrial Revolution. Option D. Medieval universities. The correct answer is option C. Industrial Revolution. This points to Industrial Revolution because industrialization shifted Europe toward factory-based production. Sherman Antitrust Act points instead to Congress tried to curb monopolies and restraints of trade. Voting Rights Act of 1965 points instead to federal law attacked barriers such as literacy tests and voting, and medieval universities points instead to schools developed around theology, law, medicine, and scholastic debate. Question 15. Trace this clue to the correct historical topic. Women gained constitutional protection for voting rights. Option A. Iconoclasm. Option B. 19th Amendment. Option C. Erie Canal. Option D. American System. The correct answer is option B. 19th Amendment. This points to 19th Amendment because the amendment marked a major victory for women's suffrage. Iconoclasm points instead to Byzantine disputes over religious images divided church and empire. Erie Canal points instead to a canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. And American System points instead to Clay promoted tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements. Question 16. Explain which answer fits this CLEP history clue. A Babylonian law code showed written legal rules and social hierarchy. Option A. Red Scare. Option B. Hammurabi's Code. Option C. Transcontinental Railroad. Option D. World War I alliances. The correct answer is option B. Hammurabi's Code. This points to Hammurabi's Code because the code is an early example of codified law. Red Scare points instead to fear of radicals, and communism led to raids and restrictions after World War I. Transcontinental Railroad points instead to rail lines connected the country and accelerated Western settlement and commerce. And World War I alliances points instead to entangling alliances turned a regional crisis into a wider war. Question 17. Interpret this clue and choose the best answer. German rulers could choose Lutheranism or Catholicism for their territories. Option A. Steam engine. Option B. Athenian democracy. Option C. Peace of Augsburg. Option D. Northern Renaissance. The correct answer is option C. Peace of Augsburg. This points to Peace of Augsburg because the settlement temporarily managed religious division in the Holy Roman Empire. Steam engine points instead to improved power technology drove factories, railroads, and mines. Athenian democracy points instead to citizens participated directly in political decision-making, and Northern Renaissance points instead to reform-minded humanism spread in Northern Europe. Question 18. Analyze this history clue and find the match. Rome's written laws protected some legal rights for citizens. Option A. Magna Carta. Option B. 12 Tables. Option C. Calvinism. Option D. Mexican-American War. The correct answer is option B. 12 Tables. This points to 12 Tables because the laws were an early foundation of Roman legal tradition. Magna Carta points instead to English nobles' forced limits on royal power in 1215. Calvinism points instead to a Protestant movement emphasized predestination and disciplined communities, and Mexican-American War points instead to U.S. victory added Western lands and reignited debate over slavery's expansion. Question 19. Recall the answer linked to this clue. A heliocentric model placed the Sun at the center of the solar system. Option A. English Civil War. Option B. End of the Cold War. Option C. Copernicus. Option D. French and Indian War. The correct answer is option C. Copernicus. This points to Copernicus because his theory challenged geocentric astronomy. English Civil War points instead to conflict between king and parliament challenged royal absolutism. End of the Cold War points instead to Soviet collapse ended the decades-long US-Soviet rivalry, and French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes. Question 20. Name the event, idea, or policy described here. Farmers demanded reforms such as free silver, railroad regulation, and direct democracy. Option A, Pearl Harbor. Option B, populist movement. Option C, Calvinism. Option D, Spanish Armada. The correct answer is option B, populist movement. This points to populist movement because the movement reflected rural anger over debt, prices, and corporate power. Pearl Harbor points instead to Japan's attack brought the United States into World War II. Calvinism points instead to a Protestant movement emphasized predestination and disciplined communities, and Spanish Armada points instead to Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige. Question 21. Match this CLEP History Civil Rights Movement clue with the correct answer. Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain. Option A, Montesquieu. Option B, common sense. Option C, Cuban Missile Crisis. Option D, NATO. The correct answer is option B, common sense. This points to common sense because the pamphlet helped build popular support for breaking with Britain. Montesquieu points instead to a philosopher advocated separation of powers. Cuban Missile Crisis points instead to a nuclear standoff brought the United States and Soviet Union close to war, and NATO points instead to a military alliance linked the United States with Western Europe. Question 22. Distinguish the correct answer from similar history topics. Improved farming increased food production before industrialization. Option A, Agricultural Revolution. Option B, Crimean War. Option C, Dawes Act. Option D, Cuban Missile Crisis. The correct answer is option A, Agricultural Revolution. This points to agricultural revolution because higher productivity supported population growth and urban labor. Crimean War points instead to a mid-19th century war exposed Russian weakness and shifted European diplomacy. Dawes Act points instead to tribal lands were divided into individual allotments to assimilate Native Americans, and Cuban Missile Crisis points instead to a nuclear standoff brought the United States and Soviet Union close to war. Question 23. Locate the correct choice for this CLEP clue. A Paris crowd attacked a royal prison in 1789. Option A, Henry VIII. Option B, Storming of the Bastille. Option C, Spanish Armada. Option D, Dreyfus Affair. The correct answer is option B, Storming of the Bastille. This points to Storming of the Bastille because the event became a symbol of revolutionary action. Henry VIII points instead to the English king broke with Rome and created the Church of England. Spanish Armada points instead to Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige, and Dreyfus Affair points instead to a French scandal over antisemitism and military injustice divided society. Question 24. Review this clue and select the best answer. Piedmont, Garibaldi, and nationalist politics helped create Italy. Option A, Italian unification. Option B, mercantilism. Option C, common sense. Option D, economic interpretation. The correct answer is option A, Italian unification. This points to Italian unification because unification changed the European balance of power. Mercantilism points instead to colonies supplied raw materials and markets for the mother country. Common sense points instead to Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain, and economic interpretation points instead to historical change is explained through production, trade, labor, and wealth. Question 25. Decide which option this CLEP history clue describes. A historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence. Option A, secondary source. Option B, 17th Amendment. Option C, thesis statement. Option D, corroboration. The correct answer is option C, thesis statement. This points to thesis statement because a thesis guides interpretation rather than merely listing facts. Secondary source points instead to a later interpretation explains or analyzes past events. 17th Amendment points instead to senators became elected directly by voters, and corroboration points instead to historians compare sources to test reliability and build evidence. Question 26. Evaluate the options and choose the one that fits. Soviet collapse ended the decades -long US-Soviet rivalry. Option A, Proclamation of 1763. Option B, Newton. Option C, Wilmot Proviso. Option D, End of the Cold War. The correct answer is option D, End of the Cold War. This points to end of the Cold War because the event transformed global politics after 1991. Proclamation of 1763 points instead to Britain tried to limit colonial settlement west of the Appalachians. Newton points instead to laws of motion and gravity unified celestial and earthly physics, and Wilmot Proviso points instead to a proposal tried to ban slavery in lands gained from Mexico. Question 27. Consider in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue. Drought and soil erosion devastated Great Plains farmers during the Depression? Option A, Dust Bowl. Option B, Iconoclasm. Option C, Alexander the Great. Option D, Chinese Exclusion Act. The correct answer is option A, Dust Bowl. This points to Dust Bowl because the disaster worsened rural suffering and migration. Iconoclasm points instead to Byzantine disputes over religious images divided church and empire. Alexander the Great points instead to Macedonian conquest spread Greek culture across the eastern Mediterranean and Near East, and Chinese Exclusion Act points instead to federal law restricted immigration from China in 1882. Question 28. Predict the answer. A CLEP item is targeting colonies supplied raw materials and markets for the mother country. Option A, Jacksonian democracy. Option B, mercantilism. Option C, Harriet Beecher Stowe. Option D, investiture controversy. The correct answer is option B, mercantilism. This points to mercantilism because the system treated colonies as sources of wealth for an imperial power. Jacksonian democracy points instead to politics expanded white male suffrage and celebrated the common man. Harriet Beecher Stowe points instead to her novel Uncle Tom's Cabin increased northern anti-slavery feeling, and investiture controversy points instead to popes and emperors fought over appointing bishops. Question 29. Notice the key clue and choose the matching answer. Events are placed in correct time order. Option A, chronology. Option B, black codes. Option C, Marshall Plan. Option D, World War I alliances. The correct answer is option A, chronology. This points to chronology because chronology helps students recognize cause, sequence, and periodization. Black codes points instead to Southern laws restricted the freedom of formerly enslaved people. Marshall Plan points instead to the United States funded European recovery after World War II, and World War I alliances points instead to entangling alliances turned a regional crisis into a wider war. Question 30. Estimate which topic this clue would test. Voting rights could not be denied based on race, color, or previous servitude. Option A, Agricultural Revolution. Option B, Pearl Harbor. Option C, Napoleon Bonaparte. Option D, 15th Amendment. The correct answer is option D, 15th Amendment. This points to 15th Amendment because the amendment aimed to protect black male suffrage during Reconstruction. Agricultural Revolution points instead to improved farming, increased food production before industrialization. Pearl Harbor points instead to Japan's attack brought the United States into World War II, and Napoleon Bonaparte points instead to a military leader spread French reforms while building an empire. Question 31. Judge which option best completes this clue. Fear of radicals and communism led to raids and restrictions after World War I. Option A, Voting Rights Act of 1965. Option B, Boston Tea Party. Option C, Gilded Age. Option D, Red Scare. The correct answer is option D, Red Scare. This points to Red Scare because the panic reflected anxiety over revolution, labor unrest, and immigration. Voting Rights Act of 1965 points instead to federal law attacked barriers such as literacy tests in voting. Boston Tea Party points instead to colonists protested the Tea Act by destroying tea in Boston Harbor, and Gilded Age points instead to rapid industrial growth hid deep inequality and political corruption. Question 32. Assess the clue and select a correct history term. Philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry. Option A, Great Society. Option B, Jacksonian democracy. Option C, French and Indian War. Option D, Socrates. The correct answer is option D, Socrates. This points to Socrates because his method of questioning became central to Western philosophy. Great Society points instead to Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Jacksonian Democracy points instead to politics expanded white male suffrage and celebrated the common man, and French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes. Question 33. Classify this clue under the right historical answer. Southern laws restricted the freedom of formerly enslaved people. Option A, Louisiana Purchase. Option B, D-Day. Option C, Black Codes. Option D, German unification. The correct answer is option C, Black Codes. This points to Black Codes because the codes showed white Southern resistance to emancipation. Louisiana Purchase points instead to Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France. D-Day points instead to Allied forces landed in Normandy to begin liberating Western Europe, and German unification points instead to Bismarck used diplomacy and war to unify Germany under Prussia. Question 34. Infer the answer from this short CLEP clue. The 18th Amendment banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol. Option A, causation. Option B, Congress of Vienna. Option C, Weimar Republic. Option D, prohibition. The correct answer is option D, prohibition. This points to prohibition because the policy reflected progressive moral reform and created enforcement problems. Causation points instead to historians explain how one development helped produce another. Congress of Vienna points instead to European powers restored balance after Napoleon's defeat, and Weimar Republic points instead to Germany's post-World War I democracy faced inflation, extremism, and legitimacy problems. Question 35. Link this clue to the correct exam topic. Cornwallis surrendered after American and French forces trapped him. Option A, Munich Conference. Option B, Christianity. Option C, Yorktown. Option D, Ancient Egypt. The correct answer is option C, Yorktown. This points to Yorktown because the victory effectively ended major fighting in the revolution. Munich Conference points instead to European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938. Christianity points instead to a religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe, and Ancient Egypt points instead to pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization. Question 36. Uncover the answer behind this history clue. Her novel Uncle Tom's Cabin increased Northern anti-slavery feeling. Option A, Wilmot Proviso. Option B, 30 Years' War. Option C, Diocletian. Option D, Harriet Beecher Stowe. The correct answer is option D, Harriet Beecher Stowe. This points to Harriet Beecher Stowe because the book made slavery's cruelty more visible to many readers. Wilmot Proviso points instead to a proposal tried to ban slavery in lands gained from Mexico. 30 Years' War points instead to a destructive European war mixed religious and political conflict, and Diocletian points instead to a Roman emperor divided administration to manage imperial crisis. Question 37. Test your recall by choosing the answer for this clue. The United States funded European recovery after World War II. Option A, women's suffrage. Option B, Marshall Plan. Option C, Martin Luther. Option D, Stalin. The correct answer is option B, Marshall Plan. This points to Marshall Plan because the plan aimed to rebuild economies and resist communism. Women's suffrage points instead to women organized for voting rights and legal equality. Martin Luther points instead to a monk challenged indulgences and helped launch the Protestant Reformation, and Stalin points instead to Soviet rule featured collectivization, 5-year plans, and political terror. Question 38. Practice this CLEP- style match. East Germans opened the barrier dividing Berlin in 1989. Option A, Pax Romana. Option B, Persian Empire. Option C, Fall of the Berlin Wall. Option D, Fascism. The correct answer is option C, Fall of the Berlin Wall. This points to Fall of the Berlin Wall because the event symbolized the collapse of communist control in Eastern Europe. Pax Romana points instead to the Roman Empire experienced relative peace and prosperity. Persian Empire points instead to a large empire used satraps and roads to govern diverse peoples, and fascism points instead to authoritarian nationalism rejected liberal democracy and communism. Question 39. Challenge yourself to identify this history clue. Rapid industrial growth could deep inequality and political corruption. Option A, Gilded Age. Option B, Weimar Republic. Option C, United Nations. Option D, Compromise of 1877. The correct answer is option A, Gilded Age. This points to Gilded Age because the term describes late 19th-century prosperity mixed with serious social problems. Weimar Republic points instead to Germany's post-World War I democracy faced inflation, extremism, and legitimacy problems. United Nations points instead to an international organization was created after World War II to promote peace and cooperation, and Compromise of 1877 points instead to the disputed 1876 election ended with federal troops leaving the South. Question 40. Confirm the correct answer for this clue. Birth rates rose after World War II. Option A, World War I. Option B, baby boom. Option C, printing press. Option D, Columbian exchange. The correct answer is option B, baby boom. This points to baby boom because the demographic shift shaped suburbs, schools, and consumer culture. World War I points instead to U.S. entry helped the Allies and increased federal power at home. Printing press points instead to movable type spread books and ideas more quickly, and Columbian exchange points instead to new foods, animals, diseases, and peoples moved between the Eastern and Western hemispheres. Question 41. Verify which option matches this CLEP history clue. The Soviet satellite launch intensified Cold War competition in science and education. Option A, Sputnik. Option B, Social Security Act. Option C, 12 tables. Option D, Brown v. Board of Education. The correct answer is option A, Sputnik. This points to Sputnik because the event raised U.S. fears of falling behind technologically. Social Security Act points instead to the New Deal created pensions and unemployment insurance. 12 tables points instead to Rome's written laws protected some legal rights for citizens. And Brown v. Board of Education points instead to the Supreme Court declared segregated public schools unconstitutional. Question 42. Solve this quick history clue. Medieval thinkers used reason to examine theology. Option A, Socrates. Option B, French and Indian War. Option C, Homeric epics. Option D, Scholasticism. The correct answer is option D, Scholasticism. This points to scholasticism because the method shaped university learning. Socrates points instead to a philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry. French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes. And Homeric epics points instead to Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals. Question 43. Figure out the correct answer from this clue. Analysis compares what stayed the same and what shifted over time. Option A, Voting Rights Act of 1965. Option B, John Brown's Raid. Option C, Continuity and Change. Option D, Trail of Tears. The correct answer is option C, Continuity and Change. This points to continuity and change because this skill is common in history interpretation. Voting Rights Act of 1965 points instead to federal law attacked barriers such as literacy tests in voting. John Brown's Raid points instead to an abolitionist attack on Harper's Ferry frightened many Southerners, and Trail of Tears points instead to Cherokee removal led to deadly forced migration westward. Question 44. Find the option that best fits this clue. Entangling alliances turned a regional crisis into a wider war. Option A, World War I alliances. Option B, Lenin. Option C, Roe v. Wade. Option D, muckrakers. The correct answer is option A, World War I alliances. This points to World War I alliances because alliance systems helped escalate conflict in 1914. Lenin points instead to the Bolshevik leader promoted vanguard revolution and withdrew Russia from World War I. Roe v. Wade points instead to the Supreme Court recognized a constitutional right to abortion in 1973, and muckrakers points instead to journalists, exposed corporate abuse, corruption, and urban problems. Question 45. Remember which topic connects to this clue. English nobles forced limits on royal power in 1215. Option A, Harriet Beecher Stowe. Option B, Erie Canal. Option C, Magna Carta. Option D, Spanish Armada. The correct answer is option C, Magna Carta. This points to Magna Carta because the charter became associated with rule of law. Harriet Beecher Stowe points instead to her novel Uncle Tom's Cabin increased northern anti-slavery feeling. Erie Canal points instead to a canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. And Spanish Armada points instead to Spain's failed invasion of England weakened Spanish prestige. Question 46. Highlight the answer described by this clue. Historians compare sources to test reliability and build evidence. Option A, chronology. Option B, corroboration. Option C, Treaty of Versailles. Option D, Hitler. The correct answer is option B, corroboration. This points to corroboration because corroboration helps avoid relying on one source alone. Chronology points instead to events are placed in correct time order. Treaty of Versailles points instead to Germany faced blame, reparations, and territorial losses after World War I, and Hitler points instead to Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology. Question 47. Separate the correct answer from close distractors. Women organized for voting rights and legal equality. Option A, Christianity. Option B, French and Indian War. Option C, women's suffrage. Option D, Munich Conference. The correct answer is option C, women's suffrage. This points to women's suffrage because the movement challenged gender limits in political life. Christianity points instead to a religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe. French and Indian War points instead to Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes, and Munich Conference points instead to European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938. Question 48. Clarify which history topic this clue describes. Lyndon Johnson's programs targeted poverty, education, healthcare, and civil rights. Option A, Great Society. Option B, Congress of Vienna. Option C, Athenian democracy. Option D, Alexander the Great. The correct answer is option A, Great Society. This points to Great Society because the initiative expanded the welfare state and federal reform efforts. Congress of Vienna points instead to European powers restored balance after Napoleon's defeat. Athenian democracy points instead to citizens participated directly in political decision-making, and Alexander the Great points instead to Macedonian conquest spread Greek culture across the eastern Mediterranean and Near East. Question 49. Relate this clue to the correct CLEP history answer. Industrial jobs drew people into rapidly growing cities. Option A, printing press. Option B, urbanization. Option C, Watergate. Option D, Gettysburg. The correct answer is option B, urbanization. This points to urbanization because city growth created new social problems and opportunities. Printing press points instead to movable type spread books and ideas more quickly. Watergate points instead to a political scandal led to President Nixon's resignation, and Gettysburg points instead to a Union victory marked a major turning point in the Civil War. Question 50. Detect the answer hidden in this clue. Belief in one God distinguished ancient Hebrew religion. Option A, Hebrew monotheism. Option B, Louisiana Purchase. Option C, Munich Conference. Option D, Freedmen's Bureau. The correct answer is option A, Hebrew monotheism. This points to Hebrew monotheism because monotheism became a major influence on later Western religious traditions. Louisiana Purchase points instead to Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France. Munich Conference points instead to European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938, and Freedmen's Bureau points instead to a federal agency assisted formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Question 51. Differentiate the matching answer from other periods. A later interpretation explains or analyzes past events. Option A, Enlightenment. Option B, Harlem Renaissance. Option C, Punic Wars. Option D, Secondary source. The correct answer is option D, Secondary source. This points to secondary source because secondary sources synthesize evidence after the fact. Enlightenment points instead to thinkers emphasized reason, natural rights, and criticism of tradition. Harlem Renaissance points instead to African American writers, artists, and musicians flourished in the 1920s, and Punic Wars points instead to Rome defeated Carthage and gained dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Question 52. Carefully choose which option matches this clue. A religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe. Option A, Holocaust. Option B, John Locke. Option C, Christianity. Option D, War of 1812. The correct answer is option C, Christianity. This points to Christianity because its spread reshaped Roman and medieval society. Holocaust points instead to Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. John Locke points instead to a philosopher argued for natural rights and government by consent. And War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Question 53. Question: which answer a CLEP item would expect colonies in Asia and Africa gained independence after World War II? Option A, decolonization. Option B, European coal and steel community. Option C, Northern Renaissance. Option D, Weimar Republic. The correct answer is option A, decolonization. This points to decolonization because the process ended many European empires. European coal and steel community points instead to Western European states' pooled coal and steel production after World War II. Northern Renaissance points instead to reform-minded humanism spread in Northern Europe, and Weimar Republic points instead to Germany's post-World War I democracy faced inflation, extremism, and legitimacy problems. Question 54. Explore this clue and identify the correct answer. A long conflict between England and France strengthened national identities. Option A, 100 Years' War. Option B, Stonewall Uprising. Option C, Calvinism. Option D, Socialism. The correct answer is option A, 100 Years' War. This points to 100 Years' War because the war changed military tactics and royal power. Stonewall Uprising points instead to resistance to a police raid helped energize the LGBTQ rights movement. Calvinism points instead to a Protestant movement emphasized predestination and disciplined communities, and socialism points instead to critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Question 55. Revisit this history clue and choose its match. Authoritarian nationalism rejected liberal democracy and communism. Option A, atomic bombings. Option B, fascism. Option C, Great Depression. Option D, 14th Amendment. The correct answer is option B, fascism. This points to fascism because fascist movements emphasized state power, hierarchy, and militarism. Atomic bombings points instead to the United States used nuclear weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Great Depression points instead to a severe economic collapse caused mass unemployment and banking failures, and 14th Amendment points instead to citizenship and equal protection were written into the Constitution. Question 56. Discover which answer. This CLEP clue describes Federalists' restricted criticism and immigration during conflict with France. Option A, Alien and Sedition Acts. Option B, Proclamation of 1763. Option C, Christianity. Option D, Holocaust. The correct answer is option A, Alien and Sedition Acts. This points to Alien and Sedition Acts because these laws raised questions about free speech and federal power. Proclamation of 1763 points instead to Britain tried to limit colonial settlement west of the Appalachians. Christianity points instead to a religion grew within the Roman world and later became dominant in Europe. And Holocaust points instead to Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. Question 57. Investigate the correct choice for this clue. A Frankish ruler built a large empire and supported Christian learning. Option A, Charlemagne. Option B, Punic Wars. Option C, Mussolini. Option D, War of 1812. The correct answer is option A, Charlemagne. This points to Charlemagne because his coronation linked kingship with the church in medieval Europe. Punic Wars points instead to Rome defeated Carthage and gained dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Mussolini points instead to Italy's fascist leader built a dictatorship after World War I, and War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Question 58. Read the clue and select the matching topic. Rome defeated Carthage and gained dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Option A, thesis statement. Option B, Punic Wars. Option C, Louisiana Purchase. Option D, Stalin. The correct answer is option B, Punic Wars. This points to Punic Wars because the wars helped transform Rome into a major empire. Thesis statement points instead to a historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence. Louisiana Purchase points instead to Jefferson doubled the nation's territory through a purchase from France, and Stalin points instead to Soviet rule featured collectivization, 5-year plans, and political terror. Question 59. Complete the exam-style clue with the correct answer. Britain gained territory but created debt that led to new colonial taxes? Option A. Articles of Confederation. Option B. Hitler. Option C. Trail of Tears. Option D. French and Indian War. The correct answer is option D. French and Indian War. This points to French and Indian War because the war reshaped North America and intensified imperial tensions. Articles of Confederation points instead to the first national government had a weak central authority and no power to tax directly. Hitler points instead to Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology, and Trail of Tears points instead to Cherokee removal led to deadly forced migration westward. Question 60. Decode this history clue and choose the right answer. Federal law restricted immigration from China in 1882. Option A. NATO. Option B. Salutary neglect. Option C. Chinese Exclusion Act. Option D. Magna Carta. The correct answer is option C. Chinese Exclusion Act. This points to Chinese Exclusion Act because the act reflected nativism and racial exclusion. NATO points instead to a military alliance linked the United States with Western Europe. Salutary neglect points instead to Britain loosely enforced colonial rules before tightening control after 1763, and Magna Carta points instead to English nobles' forced limits on royal power in 1215. Question 61. Rapidly identify the best answer for this clue. The Supreme Court denied black citizenship and rejected limits on slavery in territories. Option A. Constantine. Option B. Economic interpretation. Option C. Dred Scott decision. Option D. Abolitionism. The correct answer is option C. Dred Scott decision. This points to Dred Scott decision because the decision inflamed sectional tensions before the Civil War. Constantine points instead to a Roman emperor legalized Christianity and founded Constantinople. Economic interpretation points instead to historical change is explained through production, trade, labor, and wealth, and abolitionism points instead to reformers demanded the end of slavery through moral and political arguments. Question 62. Wisely choose which response matches this clue. People emphasized shared language, culture, and political identity. Option A. Nationalism. Option B. Whiskey Rebellion. Option C. Erie Canal. Option D. English Civil War. The correct answer is option A. Nationalism. This points to nationalism because nationalism shaped unification movements and conflicts. Whiskey Rebellion points instead to Washington used federal power to enforce an excise tax. Erie Canal points instead to a canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. And English Civil War points instead to conflict between king and parliament challenged royal absolutism. Question 63. Rank the choices by relevance and pick the best match. Eli Whitney's machine made cotton processing faster and expanded slavery's profitability. Option A. Berlin Conference. Option B. German unification. Option C. Enlightenment. Option D. Cotton gin. The correct answer is option D. Cotton gin. This points to cotton gin because the invention strengthened the cotton economy and deepened dependence on enslaved labor. Berlin Conference points instead to European powers set rules for colonizing Africa without African representation. German unification points instead to Bismarck used diplomacy and war to unify Germany under Prussia, and Enlightenment points instead to thinkers emphasized reason, natural rights, and criticism of tradition. Question 64. Prioritize the clue and select the correct history answer. Women's rights activists issued a declaration demanding equality. Option A. John Locke. Option B. Emancipation Proclamation. Option C. Crusades. Option D. Seneca Falls Convention. The correct answer is option D. Seneca Falls Convention. This points to Seneca Falls Convention because the 1848 meeting helped launch organized women's rights activism. John Locke points instead to a philosopher argued for natural rights and government by consent. Emancipation Proclamation points instead to Lincoln declared enslaved people free in areas still rebelling against the Union. and Crusades points instead to European Christians launched military campaigns toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Question 65. Focus on the clue and pick the correct option. U.S. escalation caused major protest and debate over containment. Option A, Vietnam War. Option B, Machiavelli. Option C, Crusades. Option D, Second Great Awakening. The correct answer is option A, Vietnam War. This points to Vietnam War because the conflict deeply divided American society. Machiavelli points instead to a Renaissance writer analyzed political power in The Prince. Crusades points instead to European Christians launched military campaigns toward the Eastern Mediterranean, and Second Great Awakening points instead to revivalism-inspired reform movements, such as abolition and temperance. Question 66. Use this clue to identify the tested topic. Critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Option A, Galileo. Option B, Justinian Code. Option C, socialism. Option D, revolutions of 1848. The correct answer is option C, socialism. This points to socialism because socialist ideas responded to industrial inequality. Galileo points instead to observations with a telescope supported heliocentrism and challenged church-backed views. Justinian Code points instead to Byzantine legal reform organized Roman law, and revolutions of 1848 points instead to liberals and nationalists challenged conservative governments across Europe. Question 67. Apply your CLEP history knowledge to this clue. Catholic leaders clarified doctrine and reformed church practices. Option A, socialism. Option B, Montgomery bus boycott. Option C, medieval universities. Option D, Council of Trent. The correct answer is option D, Council of Trent. This points to Council of Trent because the council was central to the Catholic Reformation. Socialism points instead to critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Montgomery bus boycott points instead to African Americans protested segregated buses after Rosa Parks' arrest, and medieval universities points instead to schools developed around theology, law, medicine, and scholastic debate. Question 68. Between the clues, which answer fits this topic? An American victory persuaded France to ally with the United States. Option A, Russian Revolution. Option B, Saratoga. Option C, thesis statement. Option D, corroboration. The correct answer is option B, Saratoga. This points to Saratoga because the battle became a diplomatic turning point in the revolution. Russian Revolution points instead to revolution ended Tsarist rule and brought Bolsheviks to power. Thesis statement points instead to a historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence, and corroboration points instead to historians compare sources to test reliability and build evidence. Question 69. Promptly in CLEP history civil rights movement, which answer fits this clue? Citizens participated directly in political decision-making? Option A, Rousseau. Option B, European Union. Option C, Athenian democracy. Option D, Bacon's rebellion. The correct answer is option C, Athenian democracy. This points to Athenian democracy because Athens developed a form of direct democracy for male citizens. Rousseau points instead to a thinker emphasized the general will and popular sovereignty. European Union points instead to European integration created shared institutions and a common market, and Bacon's rebellion points instead to frontier unrest in Virginia exposed tensions over land, class, and colonial leadership. Question 70. Smartly select the best historical match. European states expanded control over Africa and Asia in the late 19th century. Option A, point of view. Option B, 30 Years' War. Option C, New Imperialism. Option D, Great Compromise. The correct answer is option C, New Imperialism. This points to new imperialism because imperialism sought resources, markets, prestige, and strategic advantage. Point of view points instead to a source reflects the author's position, interests, and audience. 30 Years' War points instead to a destructive European war mixed religious and political conflict, and Great Compromise points instead to the Constitution created a bicameral Congress balancing large and small states. Question 71. Swiftly confirm the answer tied to this clue. Political weakness, invasions, and economic strain ended imperial rule in the West. Option A, Missouri Compromise. Option B, Magna Carta. Option C, Fall of Western Rome. Option D, Seneca Falls Convention. The correct answer is option C, Fall of Western Rome. This points to Fall of Western Rome because the fall marks a major transition to medieval Europe. Missouri Compromise points instead to Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. Magna Carta points instead to English nobles' forced limits on royal power in 1215, and Seneca Falls Convention points instead to women's rights activists issued a declaration demanding equality. Question 72. Diligently review and choose the matching answer. Journalists exposed corporate abuse, corruption, and urban problems. Option A, Muckrakers. Option B, Federalist Papers. Option C, Council of Trent. Option D, Truman Doctrine. The correct answer is option A, Muckrakers. This points to Muckrakers because their reporting helped build support for progressive reforms. Federalist Papers points instead to essays defended ratification of the Constitution and explained federal power. Council of Trent points instead to Catholic leaders' clarified doctrine and reformed church practices, and Truman Doctrine points instead to the United States' promised aid to resist communist expansion. Question 73. Immediately decide which option. The clue describes frontier unrest in Virginia exposed tensions over land, class, and colonial leadership. Option A, French Revolution. Option B, New Imperialism. Option C, Homeric epics. Option D, Bacon's Rebellion. The correct answer is option D, Bacon's Rebellion. This points to Bacon's Rebellion because the rebellion revealed conflict inside colonial society. French Revolution points instead to old-minus regime inequality and fiscal crisis helped spark radical political change. New Imperialism points instead to European states' expanded control over Africa and Asia in the late 19th century, and Homeric epics points instead to Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals. Question 74. Narrow the choices to the answer matching this clue. Franklin Roosevelt's programs expanded federal relief, recovery, and reform. Option A, Weimar Republic. Option B, Russian Revolution. Option C, Shays Rebellion. Option D, New Deal. The correct answer is option D, New Deal. This points to New Deal because the New Deal redefined the role of the federal government in the economy. Weimar Republic points instead to Germany's post-World War I democracy faced inflation, extremism, and legitimacy problems. Russian Revolution points instead to revolution ended Tsarist rule and brought Bolsheviks to power, and Shays Rebellion points instead to farmers' unrest exposed weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. Question 75. Eliminate in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement. Which answer fits this clue? Britain and France made concessions to Hitler hoping to avoid war. Option A, Jamestown. Option B, 3-5 Compromise. Option C, Appeasement. Option D, Romanticism. The correct answer is option C, Appeasement. This points to appeasement because the policy failed to stop Nazi expansion. Jamestown points instead to England's first permanent settlement survived through tobacco and difficult early conditions. 3-5 Compromise points instead to enslaved people were counted partially for representation and taxation, and Romanticism points instead to artists and writers emphasized emotion, nature, and individual expression. Question 76. Again in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue? Clay promoted tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements. Option A, Transcontinental Railroad. Option B, Yorktown. Option C, American System. Option D, House of Burgesses. The correct answer is option C, American System. This points to American System because the plan aimed to strengthen national economic development. Transcontinental Railroad points instead to rail lines connected the country and accelerated Western settlement and commerce. Yorktown points instead to Cornwallis surrendered after American and French forces trapped him, and House of Burgesses points instead to a Virginia assembly gave colonists an early model of representative government. Question 77. Think through this clue and identify the answer. The young United States avoided taking sides in European wars. Option A, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Option B, Washington's neutrality policy. Option C, United Nations. Option D, Socrates. The correct answer is option B, Washington's neutrality policy. This points to Washington's neutrality policy because this policy aimed to protect a fragile republic from foreign conflict. Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. United Nations points instead to an international organization was created after World War II to promote peace and cooperation, and Socrates points instead to a philosopher questioned assumptions and emphasized ethical inquiry. Question 78. Quickly analyze which history answer fits. A military alliance linked the United States with Western Europe. Option A, Seneca Falls Convention. Option B, NATO. Option C, Marshall Plan in Europe. Option D, common sense. The correct answer is option B, NATO. This points to NATO because the alliance was designed to deter Soviet aggression. Seneca Falls Convention points instead to women's rights activists issued a declaration demanding equality. Marshall Plan in Europe points instead to U.S. aid rebuilt Western Europe and strengthened anti-communist governments, and common sense points instead to Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain. Question 79. Inspect in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue. Revivalism inspired reform movements such as abolition and temperance. Option A, Whiskey Rebellion. Option B, Stamp Act. Option C, Second Great Awakening. Option D, feudalism. The correct answer is option C, Second Great Awakening. This points to Second Great Awakening because the movement connected religious energy with social reform. Whiskey Rebellion points instead to Washington used federal power to enforce an excise tax. Stamp Act points instead to Parliament taxed printed materials and sparked colonial protests over representation, and feudalism points instead to land holding and personal loyalty structured medieval power. Question 80. Study in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue. The Supreme Court declared segregated public schools unconstitutional. Option A, Alien and Sedition Acts. Option B, Ancient Egypt. Option C, Brown v. Board of Education. Option D, Diocletian. The correct answer is option C, Brown v. Board of Education. This points to Brown v. Board of Education because the decision challenged the legal foundation of Jim Crow segregation. Alien and Sedition Acts points instead to Federalists' restricted criticism and immigration during conflict with France. Ancient Egypt points instead to pharaohs, the Nile, and monumental architecture shaped a long-lasting civilization, and Diocletian points instead to a Roman emperor divided administration to manage imperial crisis. Question 81. Master this CLEP clue by selecting the answer. The Supreme Court recognized a constitutional right to abortion in 1973. Option A, primary source. Option B, Monroe Doctrine. Option C, Roe v. Wade. Option D, Civil Rights Act of 1964. The correct answer is option C, Roe v. Wade. This points to Roe v. Wade because the case became central to debates over privacy and reproductive rights. Primary source points instead to a document or artifact comes from the time being studied. Monroe Doctrine points instead to the United States warned European powers against new colonization in the Americas, and Civil Rights Act of 1964 points instead to Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. Question 82. Drill this history clue and pick the best match. A thinker emphasized the general will and popular sovereignty. Option A, Black Death. Option B, Rousseau. Option C, mercantilism. Option D, Magna Carta. The correct answer is option B, Rousseau. This points to Rousseau because his ideas influenced democratic and revolutionary politics. Black Death points instead to plague killed millions and disrupted Europe's economy and society. Mercantilism points instead to colonies supplied raw materials and markets for the mother country, and Magna Carta points instead to English nobles' forced limits on royal power in 1215. Question 83. Speedily review and select the answer tied to this clue. Congress outlawed segregation in public accommodations and employment discrimination. Option A, liberalism. Option B, Civil Rights Act of 1964. Option C, Augustus. Option D, Shays Rebellion. The correct answer is option B, Civil Rights Act of 1964. This points to Civil Rights Act of 1964 because the law became a landmark federal civil rights measure. Liberalism points instead to political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. Augustus points instead to Rome's first emperor created the Principate and launched the Pax Romana, and Shays Rebellion points instead to farmers' unrest exposed weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. Question 84. Check which option fits this exam clue. Farmers' unrest exposed weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation. Option A, War of 1812. Option B, salutary neglect. Option C, Shays' Rebellion. Option D, iconoclasm. The correct answer is option C, Shays' Rebellion. This points to Shays' Rebellion because the uprising convinced many leaders that the national government needed more power. War of 1812 points instead to conflict with Britain strengthened American nationalism despite mixed military results. Salutary neglect points instead to Britain loosely enforced colonial rules before tightening control after 1763, and iconoclasm points instead to Byzantine disputes over religious images divided church and empire. Question 85. Examine this clue and choose the correct answer. Nazi leadership promoted dictatorship, expansionism, and racial ideology. Option A, women's suffrage. Option B, Hitler. Option C, D-Day. Option D, Estates-General. The correct answer is option B, Hitler. This points to Hitler because Hitler's rule led to World War II and the Holocaust. Women's suffrage points instead to women organized for voting rights and legal equality. D-Day points instead to Allied forces landed in Normandy to begin liberating Western Europe, and Estates-General points instead to a French representative body met in 1789 during a fiscal crisis. Question 86. Closely compare the choices and identify the correct match. Artists and writers emphasized emotion, nature, and individual expression. Option A, Crusades. Option B, Chinese Exclusion Act. Option C, Romanticism. Option D, Peloponnesian War. The correct answer is option C, Romanticism. This points to Romanticism because the movement reacted against strict rationalism and industrial society. Crusades points instead to European Christians launched military campaigns toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Chinese Exclusion Act points instead to federal law restricted immigration from China in 1882, and Peloponnesian War points instead to Athens and Sparta fought a long war that weakened Greek city-states. Question 87. Reason through this clue and choose the answer. Rail lines connected the country and accelerated Western settlement and commerce. Option A, common sense. Option B, Henry VIII. Option C, Transcontinental Railroad. Option D, Embargo Act. The correct answer is option C, Transcontinental Railroad. This points to Transcontinental Railroad because the railroad transformed travel, trade, and the Western economy. Common sense points instead to Thomas Paine argued in plain language for independence from Britain. Henry VIII points instead to the English king broke with Rome and created the Church of England, and Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Question 88. Sort the choices and pick the one. This clue describes a canal connected the Great Lakes to the Hudson River and lowered transportation costs. Option A, Italian unification. Option B, Erie Canal. Option C, Great Compromise. Option D, feudalism. The correct answer is option B, Erie Canal. This points to Erie Canal because it helped link Western farms to Eastern markets. Italian unification points instead to Piedmont, Garibaldi, and nationalist politics helped create Italy. Great Compromise points instead to the Constitution created a bicameral Congress balancing large and small states, and feudalism points instead to landholding and personal loyalty structured medieval power. Question 89. Precisely identify which answer belongs with this clue. The United States warned European powers against new colonization in the Americas. Option A, Monroe Doctrine. Option B, Hamilton's Financial Plan. Option C, Source Bias. Option D, Wilmot Proviso. The correct answer is option A, Monroe Doctrine. This points to Monroe Doctrine because the doctrine asserted a U.S. role in the Western Hemisphere. Hamilton's Financial Plan points instead to the federal government assumed debts and supported a national bank. Source Bias points instead to evidence may be shaped by an author's motives or assumptions, and Wilmot Proviso points instead to a proposal tried to ban slavery in lands gained from Mexico. Question 90. Assuredly select the answer that matches this clue. Politics expanded white male suffrage and celebrated the common man. Option A, Great Awakening. Option B, Homeric epics. Option C, Freedmen's Bureau. Option D, Jacksonian democracy. The correct answer is option D, Jacksonian democracy. This points to Jacksonian democracy because the era broadened participation for many white men while excluding women and most Black Americans. Great Awakening points instead to religious revival stressed personal conversion and challenged established authority. Homeric epics points instead to Greek poems such as the Iliad and Odyssey preserved heroic ideals, and Friedman's Bureau points instead to a federal agency assisted formerly enslaved people after the Civil War. Question 91. Mark the best response to this CLEP clue. Pilgrims agreed to self-government before settling at Plymouth. Option A, Charlemagne. Option B, Mayflower Compact. Option C, Rousseau. Option D, Holocaust. The correct answer is option B, Mayflower Compact. This points to Mayflower Compact because it showed an early colonial commitment to majority rule and civil government. Charlemagne points instead to a Frankish ruler built a large empire and supported Christian learning. Rousseau points instead to a thinker emphasized the general will and popular sovereignty, and Holocaust points instead to Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews and millions of other victims. Question 92. Pick the option that completes this history clue. Colonists justified separation by invoking natural rights and grievances against the king. Option A, Marshall Plan. Option B, Fall of Western Rome. Option C, Liberalism. Option D, Declaration of Independence. The correct answer is option D, Declaration of Independence. This points to Declaration of Independence because the document announced independence and explained the political reasons for it. Marshall Plan points instead to the United States-funded European recovery after World War II. Fall of Western Rome points instead to political weakness, invasions, and economic strain ended imperial rule in the West, and Liberalism points instead to political ideology emphasized rights, constitutionalism, and limited government. Question 93. Look in CLEP History Civil Rights Movement, which answer fits this clue? Athens and Sparta fought a long war that weakened Greek city-states. Option A, American System. Option B, Alien and Sedition Acts. Option C, Hamilton's Financial Plan. Option D, Peloponnesian War. The correct answer is option D, Peloponnesian War. This points to Peloponnesian War because the conflict damaged Greek political stability. American System points instead to Clay promoted tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements. Alien and Sedition Acts points instead to Federalists restricted criticism and immigration during conflict with France, and Hamilton's Financial Plan points instead to the federal government assumed debts and supported a national bank. Question 94. Attentively study this clue and choose the correct match. Popular sovereignty reopened the slavery question in Western territories. Option A, Lend-Lease. Option B, Alexander the Great. Option C, Persian Empire. Option D, Kansas-Nebraska Act. The correct answer is option D, Kansas-Nebraska Act. This points to Kansas-Nebraska Act because the act undermined the Missouri Compromise and fueled violence in Kansas. Lend-Lease points instead to the United States supplied allies before entering World War II. Alexander the Great points instead to Macedonian conquest spread Greek culture across the eastern Mediterranean and Near East, and Persian Empire points instead to a large empire used satraps and roads to govern diverse peoples. Question 95. Instantly think through and identify the CLEP history answer. Many Americans believed the nation was destined to expand westward. Option A, Stamp Act. Option B, Manifest Destiny. Option C, Napoleon Bonaparte. Option D, Appeasement. The correct answer is option B, Manifest Destiny. This points to Manifest Destiny because the idea justified expansion while increasing conflict over land and slavery. Stamp Act points instead to Parliament taxed printed materials and sparked colonial protests over representation. Napoleon Bonaparte points instead to a military leader spread French reforms while building an empire, and Appeasement points instead to Britain and France made concessions to Hitler hoping to avoid war. Question 96. Recheck the clue and select a correct answer. Enslaved people were counted partially for representation and taxation. Option A, primary source. Option B, Lend-Lease. Option C, Missouri Compromise. Option D, 3-5 Compromise. The correct answer is option D, 3-5 Compromise. This points to 3-5 Compromise because the compromise showed slavery's influence on constitutional politics. Primary source points instead to a document or artifact comes from the time being studied. Lend minus lease points instead to the United States supplied allies before entering World War II, and Missouri Compromise points instead to Congress balanced free and slave states while drawing a slavery line in the Louisiana Territory. Question 97. Try this quick CLEP history clue. The United States supplied allies before entering World War II. Option A, European coal and steel community. Option B, thesis statement. Option C, lend minus lease. Option D, Embargo Act. The correct answer is option C, lend minus lease. This points to lend minus lease because the policy moved the nation away from strict neutrality. European coal and steel community points instead to Western European states' pooled coal and steel production after World War II. Thesis statement points instead to a historical argument states a defensible claim about evidence, and Embargo Act points instead to Jefferson restricted foreign trade to pressure Britain and France. Question 98. Answer this history clue with the best option. Popes and emperors fought over appointing bishops. Option A, Monroe Doctrine. Option B, Red Scare. Option C, Munich Conference. Option D, Investiture Controversy. The correct answer is option D, Investiture Controversy. This points to investiture controversy because the conflict tested church and state power in medieval Europe. Monroe Doctrine points instead to the United States warned European powers against new colonization in the Americas. Red Scare points instead to fear of radicals and communism led to raids and restrictions after World War I, and Munich Conference points instead to European leaders allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland in 1938. Question 99. Resolve which answer this clue is testing land holding and personal loyalty structured medieval power. Option A, socialism. Option B, Scopes trial. Option C, feudalism. Option D, lend minus lease. The correct answer is option C, feudalism. This points to feudalism because the system organized political and military obligations. Socialism points instead to critics of capitalism called for social ownership or stronger protections for workers. Scopes trial points instead to a trial over teaching evolution highlighted conflict between modernism and fundamentalism, and lend minus lease points instead to the United States supplied allies before entering World War II. Question 100. Unlock the correct response to this clue. A Cold War conflict began when North Korea invaded South Korea. Option A, Articles of Confederation. Option B, Federal Reserve Act. Option C, Korean War. Option D, Byzantine Empire. The correct answer is option C, Korean War. This points to Korean War because the war showed containment becoming a military policy in Asia. Articles of Confederation points instead to the first national government had a weak central authority and no power to tax directly. Federal Reserve Act points instead to Congress created a central banking system to stabilize money and credit, and Byzantine Empire points instead to the Eastern Roman Empire preserved Roman law and Greek culture.